Oh, there's no place like home, it's wonderful. My sister-in-law suddenly showed up at her parents' house and wandered around nostalgically. After looking around, she declared, "Hey, Mom, why don't we kick out my childless brother and his wife? I'll live in this house instead." She said this while my husband and I were right there. My sister-in-law has always looked down on us for not having children, while thinking highly of herself for contributing to solving Japan's low birth rate problem. Neither she nor we could have imagined that her declaration about moving back home would lead to shocking revelations that would rock her family's world. I'm a 43-year-old housewife with no children. Neither my husband nor my mother-in-law has ever blamed me for this. They've always told me that children are a blessing and not to worry about it. I did get pregnant quite a while after marriage, but unfortunately couldn't carry to term. This happened twice, and I was diagnosed with possible infertility. While treatment options were available, I was already past 40, so we decided not to pursue them. My husband and I chose to live our life without children. My mother-in-law has been wonderfully supportive, saying, "There are as many ways to be a couple as there are couples, don't worry about it. Just find your own happiness." She's always been thoughtful and caring. We get along so well that after my father-in-law passed away, we decided to live together in their house. My husband was worried about leaving his aging mother alone, so everything fell into place naturally. However, there was a situation that meant we'd eventually need to move. Apparently, my husband's great-grandfather had built this house on leased land. Not only was the house itself quite old, but according to recently updated hazard maps, the area's risk level had increased. With natural disasters becoming more frequent, we've been having more discussions about what to do. While we've considered rebuilding to improve structural integrity, we're also thinking about moving to an area with lower natural disaster risk. We've been checking hazard maps of different areas we might want to live in. My sister-in-law spent several years lounging around at home after college before impulsively marrying a man she met at a drinking party. She now lives in the neighboring city. It's been many years since she married and moved out. She has 2 children, and she believes in praise-only parenting, never scolding them. When they visit their grandparents' house, she never scolds them no matter how wild they get or what mischief they cause. While I try to look the other way most of the time, I couldn't ignore dangerous situations. Once I had to say, "Please don't play over here while I'm deep frying." I spoke gently and was making a request rather than scolding, but she launched into a tirade. "What did you just say? How dare you scold my children when you don't even have any yourself? What would a childless woman know about parenting? Don't interfere with my parenting methods, you barren woman. Children are the nation's future, and women who don't have them are traitors. I worked hard to have children even though I was a bit older. I'll accept your praise and worship, but how dare you lecture my children? Mom, you're too soft on this childless couple. Now listen here, if she hadn't warned them, your children could have been badly burned. So what? If anything, it's her fault for deep frying when there are children in the house. She doesn't understand because she doesn't have children, she's such a nuisance. It's always like this when my sister-in-law brings her children over. Her kids are quite wild and know they won't be scolded for anything, so their behavior keeps escalating. When they jumped into the garden pond, somehow it was my fault for not watching them properly. She accused me of knowing they would fall in but not stopping them, using my childlessness as an excuse to berate me. One day, when my mother-in-law and husband were out, my sister-in-law's family suddenly showed up. I've been thinking, why should a childless couple get to freeload in my family home? There are plenty of rooms, a big yard, this house is perfect for a family with children like us.
Yay!
We get to live here? I want my own room. See? The children are so happy. We need to prioritize children who'll support the future. After all, they'll have to support your retirement since you're childless. It's awful that my poor children will have to support traitors to society, but I guess getting this house is a small price to pay. She went on to say we shouldn't complain about being kicked out since we could just move into their apartment. She claimed we could surely afford the rent since we hadn't been paying any while living at home. She insisted we shouldn't worry about her mother since she'd be living with them. I replied, I can't make such an important decision on my own. What? A childless woman dares to have an opinion? Childless people should just nod and agree with whatever parents decide. Why don't you go to the White House and apologize for not having children? The children were already acting like the house was theirs, running around excitedly until they knocked over and broke an ornament their grandfather had treasured. That was something father-in-law cherished. Who needs things from dead people? It's lucky it broke. Now we have an excuse to throw away this garbage that's not worth a cent. At least apologize to mother-in-law. Don't tell me what to do, you childless woman. You have no right to an opinion. How many times do I have to tell you? Are childless people stupid? Oh, I get it, you're childless because you're stupid. It would be sad if stupidity was inherited. My sister-in-law's laughter was so loud it could be heard throughout the neighborhood. That's when my mother-in-law returned home, exasperated by the raucous laughter coming from her house. I summarized what had happened while she was out. She responded, well, in that case, I'll move out with my son and his wife. My sister-in-law froze in shock. What? Did you say you're moving out too? She asked as if seeking confirmation, and mother-in-law nodded yes. My sister-in-law's expression changed from surprise to panic. Wait. Why are you leaving too? That won't work, I need you to help with the children. She admitted she was also counting on mother-in-law's help with housework. Do you plan to work part-time? Huh? Why should I work? I'm amazing for having 2 children. I'm contributing to society. It's fine if you want to care for me, but why should I have to work? Well, then there's no need for me to help. Mother-in-law said that while she loves her grandchildren, living with them daily would be different. Given her age and declining energy, she couldn't handle such energetic children. Moreover, she knew she'd end up having to take care of her daughter, who never helped with housework even when living at home. She'd gotten used to a peaceful retirement and had no interest in such troublesome arrangements. My sister-in-law glared at us, grinding her teeth audibly, but mother-in-law ignored her and continued. So, you're fine with taking over this house? Thank you for the wonderful proposal. My sister-in-law was stunned by this thanks when she'd expected more arguments. She quickly recovered, saying, Don't think flattery will work. I want to live with you, Mom. I've learned how to do housework now. Then you shouldn't need me around. Mother-in-law replied coolly, though I knew that my sister-in-law was completely incapable of housework. She tried negotiating and offering various conditions to convince her mother, but mother-in-law was far more skilled at this game and easily turned each argument around. After several exchanges, my sister-in-law finally gave up. Oh, fine. I get it, you're moving out too. So this house becomes mine, right? Don't try to change things later. Apparently, after weighing everything, getting the house was still her priority. She seemed to conclude that accepting mother-in-law's terms was worth it to get the house. She left with some parting shots about us moving out quickly. When my husband returned home after they left, we told him everything, and he agreed it was perfect timing to move since we'd already found a new place and just needed to sign the contract. The next day, while my husband went to handle the contract, we started packing. We decided to leave behind any unnecessary furniture. Mother-in-law contacted my sister-in-law to let her know we were ready to move. On moving day, my sister-in-law's family arrived earlier than the specified time. "Hey, all this furniture is old and beat up. Are you trying to dump your garbage on us? If you don't want it, you can dispose of it yourself. You can keep any money you get from selling it." "Really? You should have said so sooner." She brightened up, thinking she could make good money from it. "Well then, childless couple, get out of my sight." She tried to force her apartment keys on us. "No thank you, we're moving somewhere else." We ignored her meaningful look and left with the movers. We parted without telling her where we were going, but a few days later, she called both our phones. "You childless people have nothing but time, so answer on the first ring." If that's all she called to say. I was about to brush it off, but surprisingly, her childless harassment ended there. "Did you know? I'm getting complaints about unpaid land rent." It turned out she didn't know the house was built on leased land or that monthly land rent had to be paid. She was panicking because she'd received bills and urgent calls from someone claiming to be the landowner. We put the call on speaker so mother-in-law could hear, and she took over. "How many years did you live in that house? I'm sure this came up during the inheritance process when your father passed away. The house is built on leased land. You never listened to important things, always focused on immediate gains. You should have told me this when I was taking over the house. I thought you knew and were taking it over anyway. You were so eager, after all." My sister-in-law shrieked in her high-pitched voice, still unsatisfied. "This is all your fault for leaving nothing but worthless furniture. They won't buy any of it because of all the scratches and sticker marks. And now they're saying I have to pay to throw it away. You made those scratches and put those stickers there. Don't you remember? How should I remember things from childhood? I think it was during college, you did it while drunk and rowdy." "What?" As my sister-in-law continued making accusations and causing a commotion, mother-in-law mercilessly hung up. She called right back, but mother-in-law said, "Don't answer, just ignore her," so we did. Realizing we wouldn't answer, she started sending messages begging for help with money, promising not to yell anymore if we just answer the phone. We reluctantly answered one call on speaker so my husband and mother-in-law could hear her explanation. She confessed her scheme. Her husband had lost his job and they couldn't afford their apartment rent. "Mom got a lot of inheritance money from Dad, right? I thought everything would work out if we moved back home. But I had no idea the land rent would be higher than apartment rent." She thought since the house was big with unused rooms, each child could have their own room, she could get help with childcare and housework from her parents, and she could live easily like in her single days. "I'm speechless, sis. Mom isn't your servant. If your husband can't work, you should work. Your family after all. I'm a woman who has children. I don't exist to earn rent money." She started insisting that we, the childless couple, should pay the land rent. "You don't have child-rearing expenses, so you have a duty to support our family with children. This is ridiculous. You're the owner of that house now. Take responsibility and pay the land rent. Don't contact us again." After my husband said this and hung up, he blocked her number. Since she didn't know where we lived and couldn't call anymore, she ended up missing 2 months of land rent payments. With no other options, she apparently decided to demolish the house and return the empty lot to the landowner. She had to borrow money for the demolition costs since she couldn't afford them, but being an unemployed couple with only leased land, no proper financial institution would give them a loan. Given the high-risk rating on the hazard map, they couldn't even rent it out. As a result, my sister-in-law borrowed money from some shady sources, which created a rift in her marriage leading to divorce. Despite her claims about praise-based parenting, she hadn't actually done any parenting at all. Her husband got custody of the children and took them to live with his parents since he hadn't found new work yet. My sister-in-law was left alone with no place to go and no money, just debt and growing interest. Having never worked even a part-time job since her student days, she was completely naive about the real world. She only applied for high-paying jobs but didn't get any of them. Unable to accept any fault of her own, she would curse at companies that rejected her, eventually getting reported to the police by security guards. While she was at her wit's end, debt collectors from the shady lenders approached her with sweet talk and introduced her to some questionable high-paying work. Since then, rumor has it that no one has seen her. She brought it on herself. She needed to experience the harsh realities of life. Both my mother-in-law and husband said this, so I decided to stop worrying about her too. We've settled into our new home, getting along well with our neighbors. My husband and I are enjoying peaceful days with mother-in-law. We had a chance to visit a rescue dog adoption event in our neighborhood, where we had a fateful encounter with a dog. Our family decided to welcome this dog as a new family member. The dog has grown very attached to us, and will continue to shower it with endless love. We're looking forward to watching this little one grow.